Okay, microphone on. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Erin Kelly. I'm the accessibility coordinator for the Pratt Library, and I'm glad to welcome you all in person and also on the live stream to our program tonight on the ADA Title I employment guidelines and what you need to know. So our presenter tonight is Sharonda Huffman. She's a native Delawarean, a wife and mother. She's a graduate of Morgan State with her BA and Strayer with her MPA. She currently serves as president of the Blue and Gold Democratic Club. Huffman is a strong advocate for persons with disabilities and inclusive, accessible, and affordable housing. She is an ADA/504 manager for a leading housing nonprofit. She is also a member of Sigma Gamma Rho, the NAACP, and other organizations. And thank you so much, Sharonda, for being here. I met Sharonda a number of years ago, and it's great to have you here with us. And if for anyone who's on the live stream, you're welcome to put comments in the chat, and we'll have a Q&A toward the end. And we will, we're recording the session, but we will clip the Q&A, so that won't be posted. So feel free to ask questions along the way.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm Sharonda Huffman. And for anyone that's visually impaired, I'm a beautiful Black woman with brown skin. I have a little afro. I'm about 5'8". I wear glasses. I have on orange jumpsuit, and I have on an orange bandana with an afro. So thank you so much for joining us. And just a little fun note we just talked about. I first met Erin because I was the ADA coordinator for the city, and Erin was working for the library, along with along with one of the managers here or directors here, Lou Bangora. I said, Erin is exceptional. Y'all need to have her in the equity office. So I am very blessed and pleased every time I come to the Enoch Pratt Library and give a presentation. These are my people, okay? So I just want to say that I live in Baltimore County, but Enoch Pratt is definitely my favorite library. But today I'm going to talk about my passion. And we do have microphones if somebody wants to raise their hand, and Erin will bring you a microphone if when we have a Q&A. And there might be some questions at the end. But I want to talk about Title I. So the American Disabilities Act was actually signed into law in 1990 because, you know how bureaucracy is. We had to do some amendments, and that was redone. So this is a law that is going to be celebrating 35 years next month, July 26th. And fortunately, Erin scheduled us at the perfect time. Didn't even recognize at the time. I just came back from the National Symposium for the American Disabilities Act. So I'm a certified ADA coordinator, and we had a great presentation. And one of the things we discussed before we went live were the changes made to, the enforcement of some EEOC laws. Okay, so I just want to say, I'm going to say what it is, and I'm not aware of real substantial changes to the enforcement of the ADA. I do encourage anyone that wants to follow up. There is a lot of guidance on the EEOC website that is available. So a lot of the work that I do professionally is based upon the American Disabilities Act. So I do human resources. Instead of having ADA, American Disability Act, reasonable accommodations go through human resources, I work for a wonderful organization that wanted to take it out of human resources. I also do accommodations for housing. So I have, a little bit of some certifications and stuff. A lot of the stuff I got through COVID. And so one of the great things, someone asked me, did you enjoy working for the city? Exactly. That was one of the reasons, is because I was able to get a lot of certifications. And, a lot of the things that I learned when I worked for the city is what I use today. So what we'll talk about today is we're going to discuss ADA Title I. There's a lot of different titles. So we're going to just talk about the HR stuff, okay? And the provisions of applicants and employees with disabilities. I'm sorry, have my glasses on, still can't say. Identify practical strategies for Title I compliance, also provide Title I resources, and answer some questions. So here are the basics. So the 5 basic requirements under the American Disabilities Act. There is a requirement because we need equal opportunity to apply for jobs and work in jobs for which they are qualified, equal opportunity to be promoted, equal access to benefits and privileges of employment, no harassment or hostile work environment, reasonable accommodations to enjoy equal employment opportunity. So, we're going to talk about the ADA altogether, but then we'll have a whole section about reasonable accommodations. One of the goals that I have is I could talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, I felt like I was discriminated against because I asked for reasonable accommodation. I have felt discriminated against because I would tell other people of how to do their reasonable accommodations. Sometimes you are the enemy of the state. But let me tell you, working in reasonable accommodations, you sometimes counter the myths of why people with disabilities can still work. That was the purpose of the law. So I stand on integrity. And therefore, sometimes I challenge the status quo of the way things have been done. I'm always looking for an opportunity to make sure a person with a disability has the opportunity to work and enjoy life. It's hard out here. And sometimes disciplinary actions can be rectified because you can make an accommodation. I personally am all over the place. I'm a high flyer. I recognize as an adult, hey, I need to calm down some. I can't concentrate all the time. I have ADHD, and so when I was diagnosed, my doctor said, it can be kind of debilitating. You've been managing it, but when you have a lot of different tasks, it can be hard to deal with. And so what I've done is when I started at an organization, I thought it was very important that we had someone from my team go to the orientation and talk specifically about reasonable accommodation because a lot of people don't know anything about it. And nobody's going to tell them, like, have you talked about someone to have a reasonable accommodation? So I think that's why it's very important that we have this conversation. And I understand that we're going to, you can ask me some questions, and y'all are, the camera's not on y'all, okay? In general employment rule, it's unlawful to discriminate against a qualified individual with a disability with regards to the job application process, hiring, promotion, discharge, compensation, benefits, training, and all aspects of employment. It's about equality, or I'm going to say equity, because sometimes it can't always be equal. Sometimes you might get a little bit more, so it can be a level playing field. Hire, fire, and promote the most qualified, deserving individual. Just because someone has a disability, it's just a different ability. So, what's the definition of disability? This is in the law, the federal law. It's a 3-part definition: a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, a record of such impairment, or being regarded as having such an impairment. So, I want to talk about that last portion, regarded as. So someone can have some protections under the American Disabilities Act, even if they themselves don't necessarily have the disability at this time. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I may have had cancer at some point, and I no longer have cancer. Well, I might be regarded as being someone who's sickly. Maybe she isn't worthy of promotion. She might get sick. Or in my case, I have an adult son with a disability. So you might look at me as someone who's not reliable because sometimes she has to take off work to take care of her son who has autism. That's the regarded as. Okay, so this is a big topic. I have the conversation with HR and managers. So the thing is, since I talk to people at orientation, they often know more than their managers because they didn't come in when I started. Okay. So that's why I want to, the rules and they might not. Okay. So qualified individual. So that means it satisfies the skill, experience, education, other job related requirements. So if someone wants to be the CEO and they have a disability and they can't do like the essential functions, you just don't get the job because you have a disability. So that's kind of make sure you're meeting those requirements. And that's where we're talking about. So perform the essential duties of the position with or without a reasonable accommodation. So if the reasonable if your job requires you to go to evening events and that is a major essential function of your job and you can never go to evening events ever in life, not even temporarily, that might not be a qualified individual. General rule: an employer is not required to hire or retain an individual who is not qualified to perform a job. So even if someone has a disability, if they're not qualified, and qualified can mean different things, then they still might not be able to retain the job. So this is always a good one. Essential functions. So everyone, depending on your job, not everybody has a job description. I don't think I ever got a job description when I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school. Some people function without having a job description. You're just hired to do the work. But the essential functions of the job is very important, especially some people who work in government, that you actually get a job description. Fundamental job duties of the employment position. It does not include marginal or peripheral functions. So essential functions are, so let me give you an example, and it will give you an example. I'm gonna be real since y'all started. How did I like working here? Okay, I was hired as an ADA coordinator. My job was higher than other people in my position. Everybody else, it was like, oh, I want to cross train you to do everything in this office. It was a conflict for me because I can't be the ADA coordinator and then also do EEO cases, because I'm already advising you. So I was like, those are marginal peripheral functions of my job. That's not required. That wasn't part of my job description. And I actually had a desk audit done. So just because someone's out sick, I don't mind sitting at the front desk and answering the phones, but that's not an essential function of my job. You can't say, well, you can't take off or you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't take off to take your son to the doctor because we don't have any front desk coverage when there's other people at the office that can do the front desk. It's not essential function of my job. Um, so when you're essential functions, it's really good to even review them every year or every time you have an evaluation because my job can change a little bit. So specify what needs to be done and how. So there's no um, ambiguity or you're unclear. Like what's my essential function or what are my marginal functions? So if my marginal function is I need to bring water to this event, but my real job is to evaluate reasonable accommodations. And I break my arm and I can't bring water to the event, do I lose my job? That's what it means. So, examples of job functions, the essential, what? The mail clerk must process incoming and outgoing mail for the company. Marginal. The mail clerk also provides backup support to the office receptionist position when the person is on break, vacation, or out sick. Preferred skills: complete tasks by managing priorities, self motivating, and working well under deadlines. So these are examples of job functions. Okay. We have the skills, some are essential. And normally, when I do like my evaluations with my staff, I kind of put a star next to the essential, and some of these extra things we talk about it every time we're doing this, or what are some of the additional things you like to do? Because some people want to expand their job and I want them to get credit for it. But then if it's not essential, I don't want them to be getting in trouble if they get sick and they can't do it anymore. So it's good to distinguish those things. Okay, so EJF is essential job function. So quantifying EJFs. Permissible under the ADA, American Disabilities Act, as long as they are actually necessary and required for the position, actually imposed on the employees. So let me just clarify something. I may only have to do something once a year, but it is so important that it can be an essential job function. If I'm the accountant and once a year I need to file those 990s once a year, it could still be essential even if I'm not doing it all the time. Okay. You cannot adopt production levels that screen out or tend to screen or to screen out or tend to screen out candidates with disabilities. So let me say it could be production levels. So even things like I need you to lift 30 pounds, okay, and you need to do 30 pounds every hour. Is that really a thing? Because what if I break my arm? Do I lose my job? Because let me say this, I probably could lift 30 pounds with one of them little robot things I see walking around Morgan's campus, or with a little lift, or with the assistance of someone else. Or even with I saw someone with the little scooter thing that they take their books around. That doesn't mean I'm lifting it, but the function really is I need to transport those those clipboards from one room to the other. Doesn't mean I have to lift it. Somebody could lift it for me. So we need to be specific. Um, an example would successfully complete 20 customer service calls per hour. That's quantifiable. And maybe you have such a high call volume, you do need to have to do the minimum. Some things are adjustable. You might have a time frame that you have to do these calls. Okay, functions are typically essential if the position for performance of the position exists for performance of the function. So I'm the ADA manager. My job is to manage the people who are processing the reasonable accommodations as well as process them. So that is my job. So there wouldn't be no position if I didn't do that. Um, a limited number of employees can perform the function and it therefore can't be reassigned. So there's only so many people so I work in the law department. There's um there's me and two other people, and maybe the lawyers can do it if I'm not there, can do this job. So I can't just go get um the person that processes the mail to come do my job. So the function is specialized, requires certain expertise to perform it. So I do require my employees to have certain expertise, but guess what I did? Everybody knows how to do everybody's job. Okay. When I'm off, somebody else can be the manager. I have a very highly skilled staff that all of them can be my manager. In fact, we talk about Baltimore City. I brought my old boss to the job and took out retirement. Okay, so she can do the job and be my boss, and we all that is a good way to make sure if something ever did happen to my staff, we wouldn't say, "Oh, you can't do your essential functions," because we all can do it. Okay, evidence of essential. It is the employer's judgment on what's essential. You can have some pushback, like that's really not essential. I have a lot of people push back, like, my job is not to sit at the front desk. I'm the manager. My job is to make sure someone does sit at the front desk, and this can be accommodated in such a different way. And that is part of the interactive process. Amount of time performing function. So if you're spending a lot of time performing the function, then it's probably essential. If infrequently performed, serious consequences if not performed when needed. And that was like the example of following the 990. And also, I have to read the collective bargaining agreement. All the things that I say can be trumped sometimes by the collective bargaining agreement. I work in the organization. Some people do have a collective bargaining agreement. And also evidence of essential. So other employees in the same position. So I'm looking at the equity um, to see if it's an essential function. Nature of work, operational organizational structure, and written job description. So why identify EGS? To avoid inconsistent and unfair employment decisions. I just want to say sometimes if you have it in writing, then we can't dispute it. So sometimes we can have the same position. They said, well, this is essential for them, but I might be mad at you, right? But this also is essential for you. That's why we need to put it in writing so we can eliminate having discrimination complaints. Um, Define positions, ensure that employees understand what's expected of them. So when I say ensure what's expected of them, you shouldn't find out at the end of the year at your evaluation around this time of the year that you messed up sometime earlier. So that's why it's good to have, check-ins. Because oftentimes some people don't discover they need like a reasonable accommodation until they realize they have performance issues. And that is completely okay. And sometimes I'll get involved and I say, well, maybe I can work with you both because some of my background is before I worked for the city, I did vocational rehabilitation for people with disabilities so they could work in hospitals. So some things are just a matter of just changing things around a little bit. I also help employees with employment, help managers with performance management. A performance issue might be a disability related issue. And oftentimes when they come through me, and I was like, if we tweak a couple things, this might be fine. There's not 100%, but we need to try it first. Okay, what's the best practice for essential job functions? List the tasks of the positions and group tasks that are related into major job function areas. Put those major function areas in an order of importance. Determine the percentage of time spent on each major function and other duties that's assigned is not a job function. Ask every candidate, can you perform? I hear amen. What they say, put your hands up. I'm telling the truth. Okay, I'll give you, go to job. Just tell me. I'm just coming telling you. Um, ask every candidate, can you perform the essential functions of the position with or without a reasonable accommodation? This is the best practice. And a lot of times managers don't know what they don't know. So I'm gonna give you some resources to educate them. So what's the accommodation basics? So let's talk about reasonable accommodations. I love this because reasonable accommodations is on a case by case basis, so we can invent new things. Any change in the work environment or in the way things are customarily done that enables an individual with a disability to enjoy equal employment opportunities. Equal employment opportunity to attain the same level of performance, or to enjoy equal benefits and privileges of employment. Okay, so that's a lot. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little specific stuff. So when can these accommodations be requested? So some people just have these online applications. Okay, so you can ask for a reasonable accommodation to do it in a different format. So you can ask for a reasonable accommodation during the application process. Performance of essential functions of the position, um, and enjoyment of equal. When can these be? Okay, enjoyment of equal benefits and privileges of employment. So these accommodations must be effective accommodations. So if you're saying, I need more time to do a project because I have ADHD. Okay, I'm giving you 5 minutes. That's not really effective. Um, Need not be best accommodation, just effective. So an interactive process might mean you come up with a suggestion. I need the 50,000 stand up desk, and I'm like, well, we have a contract with someone, and we can get you this. It functions the same, and it costs $70. And you got like, okay, I'm not going to spend that much money on a stand up desk. Must only reduce employment related barriers. And personal devices are not required. So if someone has they might have light issues, and you look at them, I said, well, they have those little flip things that you put on your glasses, and that takes care of your problem. That's kind of on the individual to get them for themselves. I'm blind. If I take my glasses off, I probably can't read this stuff, right? Someone's not responsible for me getting my glasses. Someone's not responsible for me buying my medication. So that's what it means. Or personal devices. So if I use my phone for something, personally, because I'm going to make the bigger print. That's your personal stuff. Individuals covered solely, this is what we talk about, regarded as. Prong, not entitled to accommodation. So if I ask for a reasonable accommodation and I'm like, well, do you have a disability? You still need to have the disability. So I'm going to be specific. Some people confuse American Disabilities Act with Family Medical Leave Act. So I take care of my son, right? So I shouldn't be discriminated against because, oh, she can't get a promotion because she has a son with a disability. That protects me under the American Disability Act. But to take care of my son, I can't ask for intermittent leave to take care of my son. Okay, that's under Family Medical Leave Act. So the disability has to be on me. So I just want to clarify. Um, Employer is not prevented from providing extra accommodations. So I'm extra, If I can give you extra and it's not don't cost too much, I'm gonna give you extra. You know, I've had it in situation where the place wasn't totally accessible and they really need her in the office. Did I have to say, well, let's get her a scooter, right? One of them little mobile mobility devices, because it's something that we can use for people that come into the office too. You know, did you have to get it? No, but then you also setting a precedent, but sometimes you can do more because you don't really have to buy, that's another personal device. You don't have to buy someone a scooter. But I thought it might be a great opportunity, like if we have outside events, we can take that scooter to the outside event. Okay, the interactive process, this is the good part, okay? So I always, when I do the interactive process, that means we talking, and we're negotiating, okay? So I ask HR, can I get their job description, right? And I look at what they're asking for and see if it's an essential function. Oh, it's not. Gotcha. Okay, let's talk more, okay? I'll say, so you look at the particular job and determine essential functions. Okay. And then consult with the employee about abilities and limitations. But I take you one step further. When you go to class with me, I want you to go to the job accommodation network and tell me what you think, right? I think that person is educated about their disability, might recognize they can ask me for what they need, because there's so many things out there now. You don't even know what you don't know, because that's all I'm going to do, So why don't you so when I go to the doctor and Google is my friend, I know what's wrong with me. And then I go to my medical insurance and see what has the highest copay and what has the lowest copay. I'm like, okay, I think this is wrong with me. You diagnose me and I'm gonna tell you what medicine to give me because this is covered under my plan because I don't feel like paying $40 for it. That's exactly how I expect an employee. An educated employee is more likely to be successful in a reasonable accommodation when they have more ownership of it. Okay. So then um, I also consult the with the preference of the employee. Now, some things are probably not manageable. When they say preference, I say, okay, this sounds reasonable. Let me get back with the manager and see what they say. And then we kind of have a meeting of the minds. I generally just don't tell people what they have to do or what the manager has to do unless it's very, very simple. If you ask me for a stand-up desk and I have the documentation, I don't say, I just check and see if it fits with what you have. But select the accommodation that best addresses needs of the employee and the employer because I don't know everything. Okay, so there could be a specific reason why the employer manager cannot accommodate that person because maybe somebody else is getting an accommodation. I don't know, so we negotiate. Okay, undue hardship. Everybody says, Sharonda, I don't think we can do that. Say, it's an undue hardship. So you sure it's an undue hardship? Because let's define what undue hardship means. An action that requires significant difficulty or expense, unduly costly, extensive, substantial, disruptive, fundamentally alters nature or operation of business. That's a lot of words. So if somebody says it costs too much, I only have a budget of $2 and this is going to cost 75 cents. Is that your budget for your department? Because I'm going to say, well, I'm an Enoch Pratt library. Y'all rich, rich. Okay. Y'all have private funds. So what you mean you don't have no money? And then, I'm looking at I'm looking at Brandon Scott's money. I'm like, you sure? You want to go there? So I normally eliminate that financial burden unless they want me to buy them. They want me to build a house in the backyard because they can't come to work. Okay. But I look at in relation to the size of the employer, the resources available, and the nature of the operation. So I'm going to pick on my friend back here that's doing all the work, right? Can he ask me for a reasonable accommodation to set up a studio at home to do all this stuff? And then I got to hire a temp to run back and forth and check the mics. That might be a little bit unreasonable. You know what I'm saying? There might be some backup stuff you can do remotely, but so yeah, but we'll have to see because y'all rich, rich. Y'all just don't know it. But it must be on a case by case basis. So it's important to consider alternative accommodations that do not create an undue hardship. So the hiring process, talent acquisition, onboarding, employing people with disabilities. So there's 3 stages. You have the pre-offer. It's hard to read, but you may not ask any disability related questions or require any medical examination, even if they are related to the job. So that's before you make an offer. Okay. So I can't be on the interview and be like, you look like you got the heebie jeebies. Are you sick? Are you going to be able to come to work? Because let me tell you the truth. If you never saw me before, when I was, probably 50 pounds younger, I couldn't fit 50 pounds ago, but younger, I've gotten jobs when I was pregnant. You didn't know if I was just a little chubby, but you can't ask me, are you pregnant? Nah, that's none of your business. Okay. I'm just chubby. So in a conditional job offer, now we getting a little bit, more involved. So after applicant is given a conditional job offer, but before he or she starts, they may ask disability related questions and conduct a medical examination. So for your city employees, that's when you go down to Mercy and get your test. That's legal. Okay. Regarding of whether they are related to the job, as long as as long as done before entering employment. Then the post offer, and this gets a little bit different. After employment begins, you may make disability related inquiries and require medical examinations only if job related and consistent with the business necessity. And that's also where it begins the collective bargaining agreement and things of that nature. So I generally, everything, it doesn't necessitate a fitness for duty, and no one should be making you because they suspect that you might be, unless you're a driver and you're falling asleep at the job, something that is showing some kind of risk. Um, Building workplace diversity, recruitment, and advertising strategies. So if we are way behind the 8 ball, if we've had a law for 35 years, why is it so hard for people to hire people with disabilities? So I like to put this in here. I like to say it to the employers. Okay, let's be more inclusive. We need to post job openings with disability groups in college, university, career centers. Participate in disability related job fairs. Issue details about job location, all postings, and highlight accessible features. Indicate availability of flexible working conditions. Establish internship and mentorship programs targeted at youth with disabilities. So I just always like to shout out Humanin. I worked there as a vocational worker, and they had a program with different school districts. So I worked in Howard County and Baltimore City. And so students who were seniors who had an IEP, individual education plan, or 504 plan, they had the option to have a work program. And so they actually would work in hospitals like Mercy, Johns Hopkins, and actually I was the first cohort that worked at Bayview. And with that work experience, I worked with them after school was out, and sometimes they were able to get full-time employment. That was the goal. So those are the type of things, like, your workforce development needs to be intertwined. And so I do have to say I wish more organizations were more friendly to that, because and not only did I work with them, I helped with their job, because some people just need extra help having a job coach. Okay, so job application forms, pre-employment, pre-offer. So with private businesses, the American Disability Act prohibits any pre-employment inquiries about a disability on application forms. Now, on state and local government, Section 504 allows agencies to invite applicants to self-identify to satisfy affirmative action requirements. Unacceptable requests. You shouldn't ask, have you had or been treated for a condition or disease? So that's like, have you been hospitalized? This is outside of them, you're getting your application. You've already got your your employment offer. Have you been treated by a psychiatrist or psychologist? Is there any health related reason you may not be able to perform the job which you are applying? This is at the application process. No, don't do it. How many days were you present from work due to illness last year? Now, I can self identify because I think my strength is the fact that I have helped people with disabilities. But I was in a job interview one time, and people should know better. I said, like, my experience stems from, being an advocate for my son who has autism. In the interview, they was like, "Oh, okay. Will you need to take any leave or anything to take care of him?" I didn't say anything. I still got the job, but I'm just telling you, I had to educate them on, you don't ask those type of questions, even if I disclose it. Okay. And it might have just been innocent, like, I really like you. If you need to have a flexible schedule, you can say that. You can say, you don't ask the question. I said, thank you for telling me that. We do offer flexible spending. I'm thinking about my flexible spending account, but I've been using my card. Um, so you can say, hey, we offer an environment where we allow you to work from home, but you don't have to ask the question. I try to tell people to have a work-life balance versus you're scared to tell me stuff. Because I'm not coming to work if my child is really sick. I think ever since COVID, I don't even know how to come to work every day. So that's too much. More bad inquiries. Are you taking any prescribed medications? Have you ever filed for workers' compensation? Have you ever been treated for alcoholism or drug addiction? Will you need treatment or special leave because of a disease or condition? Anything related to nature, severity, or prognosis related to a disability, that's a no-no. What you can say is, um, in the applicant's ability to perform job-related functions, can even ask for a demonstration with or without an accommodation. So I might give you a test. Okay. Questions must not be framed in a term of disability. Pre-employment, post offer. Once a conditional job offer is made, the employer may ask disability related questions and may require medical examination as long as this is done for entering employment in that job category. When can an offer be revoked? A conditional job offer can be revoked because a disability is discovered post offer if reasons are job related and consistent with business necessity. Performance of the essential functions can't be accomplished with reasonable accommodations, and safety reason because the person poses a direct threat to self or others. So if I hired you for a job and a real essential function of the job, not a marginal function, like they said I should have a license, right? I hardly ever go anywhere, and I also can Uber. Okay. Um, if you are a driver, or maybe you're a DPW driver and you have or on record for having like epilepsy and they have taken your license, you need a license, then that might be essential function. But they might say it's essential function for me to have a license because sometimes I might have to drive somewhere. I don't have to drive. They got Uber. Somebody else can take me. So these essential functions might not really be essential. And if I really need to go somewhere, I have a whole bunch of people that will drive me around. Okay. Direct threat. A significant risk of substantial harm that cannot be eliminated with a reasonable accommodation. Specific risks must be identified and considered. Duration of the risk. So it could be temporary. That doesn't mean you should just lose your job. Nature and severity of the potential harm and likelihood of occurrence. Imminence of potential harm. So if I'm on a construction site and I totally lost my hearing, they might feel that as a threat, but I might be able to accommodate my hearing loss because I have hearing aids. So it has to, you have to really evaluate it. So we have to consider a risk must be current, not speculative or remote. Because some people don't understand different disabilities and they'll assume, oh, that's what happened. What if this happens? What if that happens? We can't do that. Assessment based on an objective medical or other evidence related to the specific individual and maybe direct threat to self or others. During employment, medical exams and inquiries must be job related and necessary for business. When allowed, evidence of job performance or safety problem. So required by other federal laws. So some federal laws may require you to sometimes have drug testing. Fitness for duty exams, voluntary exam that are part of the employee health program. So of course we have those like, we want you to stay alive day, so they might check your blood pressure, things like that. That's okay. Test for illegal use of drugs or not. Oh, let me clarify, that's not medical exams. So performance and evaluation. All employees are required to meet production, performance, and conduct standards and must convey standards to all. I'm going to add something to this that's not in the slides. They came up with this new law called the Pregnancy Fairness Workers Act. And that law allows you to take away some of those essential functions temporarily. Okay, so that's a very, very new law, and it hasn't really gone through the court system yet. So we'll see what happens. But I've had individuals who fell into different categories. So I just want to put that out there. There's extra protection for people that are pregnant or even have lost a child or they've had a baby if it's related to the pregnancy for the individual. Okay, so back to this. Evaluate based on performance and essential functions, not marginal functions. So that thing where we said, I need front desk coverage and you got 60 employees, but I want you to do it. And it's not my real job. Nah, I'm looking at you like, do you really need her to do it? Must provide reasonable accommodations to participate in evaluation process. So if someone isn't, some of these evaluations look kind of crazy to me. So if they want the stuff to be read out loud or they want to meet in a certain manner, you must, you can offer a reasonable accommodation. No retaliation allowed based on RA request, disability, or filing a complaint. So what I always tell people personally, that's why I go to the meetings. You don't have to tell your supervisor exactly what's going on with you. You can go directly to the people that's giving you the reasonable accommodation. So it's not on record. So if I think in the back of my mind, hey, I know she got some incurable disease, I'm not going, even though she might be in remission, I don't know if I want to hire her because she might have to take off. I'm not saying it happens, but I'm saying it happens. We always have these things in the back of our head. And I'm just like, is none your business. Just tell me. Okay. And treat all equivalently situated employees similarly. So I don't want everything to base on, because I don't know these people. So I kind of like, I have in the back of my mind who, what, when, but I don't want to see the same situation and you don't want to do it for this person, you don't do it for that one. It is a case by case basis, but I try to, offer fairness. Okay, Title I resources. Okay. So this is where, like, I'm like, be as smart as me because this is where I go. So you have the equal, I keep saying EEOC, but it's Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. They have a wonderful website. So when there's scenarios, they said, like, what's the undue hardship? It gives a whole bunch of scenarios, and I actually turn it into a FAQ. Is this really happening? And also, I check to see court cases, like what because the EEOC will say we have made rulings on this. Because let me tell you about the law. Nobody ever changes the law. You know how hard it is to change the law. So they make regulations. Okay. So one of the questions I was asked earlier, well, with all the changes with the EEOC, I'm going to tell you, they still have all the disability related stuff up there. Okay. So I'm saying disability has been consistent, but it's only, it's June. I don't know what's going to happen in July. But but that's why I went to the conference. The next one is the Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. That's a good resource. And I always go to the Job Accommodation Network. And I showed up in Atlanta just to talk to these people in person, And so every scenario, I can Google, stuff I never even heard of and can't pronounce. And then it's like, okay, these are some of the things. And you can set up an account and I can send them stuff, and it's all like they just save it. They don't go out and report out or anything. An employer could call, an employee could call. You give them scenarios, and they give you feedback. So excellent resource. Okay, so I am a ADA Training Leadership Network trainer. So that is funded by the National Institute of Disability Independent Living today. I think they took their funding, but ultimately it might go transfer to somebody else, but that's their. The ADA network, actually, the ADA network is nationwide. And so there actually is one in Maryland. So I have a very good relationship, and she's actually giving presentations here, Dr. Ann Deschamps. I can call her directly. She's in Rockville. And they are the Mid-Atlantic ADA network for this region. And the great thing about it is anybody can join the ADA Training Leadership Network. And when they have their different, so it's just like you could be a person that wants to, have a conversation about these type of things with other people. And so I have access to a whole bunch of different slides that I use in order to give trainings. So I just want to plug them. And here's some of the few publications like EEOC's, the ADA, Your Responsibility as an Employer, EEOC's Pre-Employment Disability Inquiries with Medical Exams, and EEOC's Reasonable Accommodations and Undue Hardship under ADA. I go to that all the time. So when somebody says something, I'm like, no, no, no. That's what's still on the website. DOG's Title II Toolkit. Title II talks about government. Chapter 188 Basics. So I always encourage people to take this basics training. So because there are different titles to the American Disabilities Act, because people don't know what they don't know. So now I'm gonna stop here. And if somebody wants to, if there's any questions in the chat or anything like that, or do we have any questions inside? Because if not, I can also go over. I have a test. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, don't be shy. Go ahead. And you don't have to say your name if you don't want nobody to know who you are.
Thank you.
Testing.
Talk and I'll repeat it. Mhm. Great question. I says, as an employee and you've experienced discrimination based upon disability, what are your next steps? I'm not only a trainer, but I'm an employee that has experienced discrimination because of a disability. Um, the next steps are, everything is going to be based on the burden of proof is on you. Okay. Discrimination is, they call it a prima facie case and all this other stuff. So, but you do have options. First of all, if you find something is discriminatory, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. They might not even know they're being discriminatory. Okay. I'm gonna give you an example. I asked for leave. They was like, oh, we got this thing and it wasn't even that important, right? And I felt like you were just doing that because I had said I needed an ADA accommodation, right? So then I sent something, let's say in the city, I sent something to HR. And it just ended up like, yeah, you got to let her do that, right? Because it might just be that simple. Now, if it becomes a thing, say, hey, I have a question about that, because it appears, because I went to the Job Accommodation Network, and the Job Accommodation Network in this email pursuant to XYZ says, we have to have, did you even process my reasonable accommodation? Because your manager might not be the person that's supposed to be processing, because they don't even know it's called a reasonable accommodation. Because sometimes I could say, I need the day off because I have migraines. So I might need to change my schedule a little bit. They don't even know that's a reasonable accommodation because you ain't say the right words. So you have to educate yourself, is how do I fill out the form for the reasonable accommodation, right? And then if you feel like you fill out the form and you're getting discriminated against, and you might not be getting promotions or taking your work away, then if you have to, you don't have to go to the EEOC to file a complaint. Okay. If you're in Maryland, you can go to the Maryland Civil Rights Commission, and they literally down the street. And you also, depending on your municipality, they might handle an EEOC complaint. Like in Baltimore City, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights do handle EEOC complaints. So that is how you handle it. But for me, I normally give people a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and kill them with documents and the email from the Job Accommodation Network to give them the opportunity to correct their mistake. Because I'm gonna tell you, I don't know that I'm discriminated against somebody sometimes, because all this stuff isn't in writing, right? It's based upon precedent. It's based upon how they feel today. So it's discrimination is, but some people have blatantly discriminated, so that can, and also I tend not to share all my information with everyone. Some people feel so open. I only share that I have ADHD because that's part of my job and I want you to be comfortable. But if I was working somewhere and I didn't have to, maybe I wouldn't say it because I don't feel like it's a safe environment. Depends on your employer, because some people are not that educated about that stuff. Is there any other questions? Okay, go ahead. Well, let her. She no, see. She might get the mic. She might. There might be a mic coming.
Check.
Oh yes, it works. Look at that.
So under accommodation fundamentals, you mentioned personal devices are not required. Does that mean you as the employer are not required to provide them, or that the employer is not required to provide them? Or could you talk more about that? I was a bit confused.
Absolutely. So let's say, for instance, I have I'm saying I need a reasonable accommodation because I can't hear. So personal devices are things like glasses, hearing aids, things you basically like. If I said I need a reasonable accommodation. Let me say it depends, because if you need a reasonable accommodation, and you need a new keyboard, yeah, that's not a personal device, but something that you're going to take home, like you might have carpal tunnel and somebody has to get you a brace. That's something that you're going to have personally. Now, I'm not going to say that we never can do it, because like in a situation where I worked for the city, there was someone who needed a specialized hearing aid. Okay. And it's just was for work. That can be sometimes an exception to the rule. So that all depends, or specialized goggles. So that's a personal device, but it's used for work. So, it depends. But most of the time the answer is no. If you need glasses because you can't see, or you have sensitivity to light and you need sunglasses, you're probably going to have to buy those on your own. Okay. Any other questions? So some of you may have received a handy dandy quiz. So I want to ask you a few questions. And you can just shout out the answer, because I just want you to be aware, or I'll just give you the answer on some of these, like vocabulary. Okay. So essential functions. So I want you to go back to your employer and say, hey, because this is evaluation time for many people. Can we discuss what my essential functions are? They're like, what you mean essential? Everything's essential. No, the fundamental core job duties that are the reason the position exists. That's what an essential function is. So those ancillary things, those extra things, like I'm going to bring, unless you're just the what is it, the water boy? You remember that movie? That you bring water to the events and that's all you got to do. That's an extra thing, but your job might be the caterer. So that might be something that's real. So we all have to look at those things. Or I would say if someone has a limited staff, then they need to look at, hey, this is kind of everybody's job. So when somebody's gone, that's an essential function when's needed, because it does give you that opportunity. Because with the EEOC or whoever looks at it, they're going to look at your particular unit and what's going on there. So if you a 5-person show, I can't necessarily just go out and say your job is not that important. I know you have to make plans for people going on vacation, but it's probably good to allow people to learn each other's job. So when they're gone or they can't do the function because they broke something or they're out, then it's still continuity of operations. Okay, let me talk about this one. Undue hardship, because people will make that up and say it's an undue hardship. So that means it's an accommodation that will be too difficult, disruptive, or expensive to provide in light of the employer's size, financial resources, and the needs of the business, or that will be fundamentally alter the nature of the business. So if your employer, if you work here at the library and they say they can't get you another monitor because it costs too much, all right, whatever. That's not true. Y'all rich. Y'all just don't know it. Okay. Okay. So if anybody would like to do this, I'm gonna do. You also have a true false on the second thing, and some of these things are Googleable. I just want you to really understand. I think this is a good tool. Like under the ADA, employers must provide any accommodation that an applicant or employee with a disability request. Is that true? No. I have had the most extra things because people don't know what they don't know, right? And I'm not mad at them, but that's like, that don't make no sense, right? You know. Another one is employers must provide reasonable accommodations that will allow employees with disabilities to participate in employee-sponsored social activities. That's a good one. What do you think? Employer-sponsored. I just learned the answer to this. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, I'm gonna tell you the answer. The answer is true. I don't think about stuff like this, right? So if we're having an outing and so I'm thinking like we're all going to go do something together, right? And there's somebody that can't go, and I didn't take that in consideration. I could be discriminating against them, you know? And so that's another reason why I got that scooter. Sometimes we have those outdoor events. What if they want to go to the AFRAM this weekend? All them daggone hills, you gonna need a trolley or something, but I need to accommodate that for my employee. I just can't say, well, you don't need to go. Okay. We have a question over here. Do we have a microphone? 1 second.
Thank you. So part of the reason why I came here this evening, that hits on a very personal topic for me. I'm someone with celiac disease and learned that under the ADA, I have protections because the major activity that's disrupted is eating. So I'm really intrigued by what we were just discussing, because often I go places, there's a beautiful spread and there's nothing that I can eat, but then I also can't leave to go buy something that I can eat, or if I bring something, there's no refrigerator for me to keep it cool during the day. So just wanted to highlight why that's very real for me. I have a letter I can take to restaurants that says, I'm able to bring in my own food because of my condition, but I never really considered, a social activity that's employer sponsored, and how I would be able to advocate for myself around options for food.
Well, let me just say this. If I got that reasonable accommodation, I bet you'll go to the job accommodation network, and it probably would tell me I have to provide you another meal or give you the opportunity to bring your own meal. And so let me tell you another thing. My husband has diabetes, right? and you go to these you go to the Ravens game and they be like, you can't bring drinks in and stuff like that. I'll be bringing in drink sandwiches. That's a reasonable accommodation. I don't need to spend $50 for a sandwich when I can make my own sandwich with me, because if my husband's blood sugar gets low, right, he has to eat. If he has to take his medicine, then he has to have water. So I bring that stuff into amusement parks, into the thing, because I shouldn't have to pay for reasonable accommodation. I can accommodate myself. So just, they were like, girl, how you bring these sandwiches in here? Because I'm Sharonda and I know the rules. Anyone else? So if anyone wants the rest of the answers to these questions, I just want to throw it out there. And my email, hold on, yeah, it's up there. And that's my real email. It goes straight to me. It's not work. I'm happy to, answer some of your questions, but I'm just telling you that the Job Accommodation Network has changed my life. Half the time, I can't even spell some of the things that people have. And it tells me everything. Like, it's very extensive. And they have, get them while they're still here, because, they are government funded and they get grants. But they are an excellent, to your point, excellent resource for things I never even thought about. Okay, well, we have one more question from Aaron.
Actually, a question from the chat. I'll sort of summarize that. Thinking about the sort of peripheral, the marginal job pieces, that a question about if you stand up for yourself and tell them this isn't in my job description, that what happens if your supervisor gets mad and says that you're not being a team player, that they need you to jump in and do this. Sort of, how do you address that?
You want to know how Sharonda addresses it? Oh, man. Okay, so it depends on where you work at, right? So I'm not going to say everybody's going to be like Sharonda, because that's why I have to stay in like quasi-government jobs, because I know they have a higher standard, okay, or they have to act like it. But when someone says this, you have to sometimes and do the benefit, right? This isn't this interactive process is not just for the employee, it's also for the employer. And so when you frame it like, I can do a better job if, what are they getting out of it? And, I said, and then he said, you can say, I talked to this girl, Sharonda, she told me that sometimes people with disabilities have to have a level playing field. And I know that I'm a good employee and you love me, right? So what I need you to do is just allow me to do this extra thing. It's not that I'm getting a special favor. I hear this from employers all the time. If they do it, everybody else can do it. You know what my problem is? Then everybody should do it, because too many people are dying at their desk. Okay. So in order for people to change, we have to educate them. So now if they say no, it might just be like they need to have a buy-in and see how it works. A lot of people just don't know what they don't know. But you technically can file a complaint, but again, it all depends on where you work at. If you have a union, because I'm not saying everybody be Sharonda, because Sharonda's a rebel. Sharonda go find another job and file a complaint. But I'm so happy where I am now, I might never leave. So any other questions, Aaron? Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming, and feel free. I have an answer key if anybody wants to take the test, because this is Googleable. Okay. But I just want you to remember, what we learned today. And thank you again. And you probably can find this again on YouTube and the Facebook page. So you can see me forever and ever and ever if you forgot something, okay? Thank you. And cut.